All right, we're going to mix it up a little bit and do a fireside chat. So first I have to introduce Steve. I'm not sure how many of you know him, but he has more than 30 years of leadership experience, and currently he's the president of the Bucciarati Group. Good. And he has also a decade at Coca-Cola, where he was the chief diversity officer and worked in over 200 countries. He has deep knowledge, strategic capability, and practical application for all aspects of diversity and inclusion, and his leadership in the space has crossed across the workplace, into the marketplace, and also into the community. Importantly, during this time, Coca-Cola's diversity programs were critical components of the company's broader marketing agenda as well. So that business case was there again. And then during his tenure, the programs were recognized. This is a long intro.
You know what? You could just say, let's stop.
He's awesome.
Let's just talk.
Let's just talk.
Yeah.
And the reason Steve's here is I hear more in the Pacific Northwest than I hear in other regions where Artemis does work that, oh, it's too late, it's too hard. Like if you don't start early to build diversity, equity, and inclusion into your DNA, I was like, I don't know, there's gotta be some companies who pulled it off. And people are like, maybe GoDaddy. I was like, there's gotta be more. So that's how I ended up getting connected with Coca-Cola. And as we're gonna start talking, it was actually a really bad situation that Steve walked into. And so why don't we start there? Because you turned down this job initially.
Yeah, it was really bad. So for those of you who don't know, back in 1999, 2000, Coca-Cola was sued, class action lawsuit, African-American. The focus was on promotion or lack thereof and compensation and inequity. I had been with Coke for 10 years at that point in time. I was the head of human resources for global marketing innovation, thought I had the best job in the world, was miles away from the lawsuit. The lawsuit got settled after 20 months of really protracted stuff. It was bad. And they settled the lawsuit, and the CEO and the chief people officer came to me and said, we want you to fix it. And I said, thanks, I appreciate the confidence, no. I love my job, had the best job in the company, I thought, reporting chief marketing officer and working all over the world doing, good people stuff. I said, I don't have a background in this. And then my own naivete, right? My own naivete, I said, you all have noticed I'm a white guy, right? I did not think that was the right profile, particularly coming off the heels of a lawsuit. And they looked at me and said, you act like you get a vote. And I didn't. I got drafted. I went kicking and screaming into the job. And the best thing that ever happened to me, and that was 18 years ago. So I got a chance over about the last 14, 15 years of my career to lead this all over the globe.
Awesome. And the other reason we really wanted Steve here is you went and really focused on real actions and getting real results right from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us a little bit about how you approached that.
We ran it just like we run the rest of the business. You're not going to get the leader's attention unless you drive it just like the rest of the business, unless you build it into the business, into the fabric. So much like Patty talked about this morning, I mean, we went to the leaders and we were very focused on it first from a monetary perspective. Okay, big companies, small companies, medium-sized companies, they exist to make money. They do. And you have to understand that, whether you like it or not, you got to understand it. And so you got to talk the language of leaders. And we showed them how 70% of all the purchasing of Coca-Cola products worldwide was done by women. We showed in the United States that 80% of our growth over the next 10 years is going to come from people of color. So we made it an economic situation for them. And then we showed them how we were doing, and it left a lot to be desired. And so we got their attention, we built it and drove it through every aspect of our marketing worldwide, every aspect of it, and then drove it obviously through the workplace, through the community, and then through partners, people who supported us, suppliers, et cetera, et cetera. So we created this very holistic strategy, just like you would any other part of the business. And then we held people accountable like you would any other part of the business. And we had metrics like you would any other part of the business. And we got real. I mean, we didn't just talk about it, we did it.
There's so many different places where I would love to take this. So I think maybe starting at first with, so you have this huge lawsuit that you've just settled.
Yeah.
Sometimes companies are like, let's just stay away from it for a while, let's let things settle. It doesn't sound like that's the approach that you took.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of companies would retreat, defend themselves. We said we were wrong. We admitted it. And we said we were going to become, and this is literally in the litigation settlements, okay, so it's in the courts, federal courts. We said we were going to become the gold standard. and people said, what's the gold standard? We just said simple, the best. We're not going to retreat. We were wrong as a company, and we weren't going to hide behind anything. In fact, we were going to turn everything around and become the leader, because you have to step forward. Right? If you don't step forward, you're just resigned like everybody else to, okay, I'll do a little of this, a little of that, a little of this.
I think the other thing that's really interesting, so in Atlanta, you're the big employer. You're one of the big companies there. So how did that change the community once you started stepping forward?
Yeah, great question. Coke built the city of Atlanta, and it just works that way. Literally everything in the city of Atlanta has been built by Coke money. And there's a lot of major corporations now headquartered in Atlanta. And so they watched what we were doing, and we were leading. And we would talk to all of the companies. We tried to pull the companies together, and we say, how are we going to move this forward as a community? In the companies and in the community, what's the work we're going to do jointly? And you have to lead. You have to decide. I don't want to be one of the pack. There was a writer in Atlanta, and I can do this because I'm so close to Alaska. And he said, if you're not the lead dog, the scenery never changes. Okay, think about that, right? Okay. And he was right, and so we decided we're going to be the lead dog. We used to just set audacious goals for ourselves, all the time.
Awesome. So a few of the other panelists and speakers have talked about scarcity mentality, and sometimes when you start to focus on diversity, other folks might feel like, well, there's only one spot, or I need to hoard a little bit for me. Did you have any challenge with that at Coke, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, we did have a bit of a mentality about giving up people, so I could be, let's say if I was a chief marketing officer and I had a pretty diverse group, I'm not sure I want to give up my people, because we had very specific accountability and metrics in place. We had goals. 20% of their bonus was against this, all the executives, things like that. And so in the beginning, there was a bit of a mentality that, oh, look, my numbers will go down while I'm helping somebody else's numbers go up. And so we kind of took a page from the sports pages, and we said, no, you get goals and assists. Okay? Very few people score a goal on their own. If you're in soccer, you don't dribble all the way down the field and score by yourself, et cetera, et cetera. So we said, if you're developing the talent and you move the talent to the place where the talent continue to move up, that's the same thing as scoring a goal. You get the big assist. So we try to create an abundance mentality as opposed to a scarcity mentality.
Then you've mentioned we a few times. So who is that we within the organization that was doing all of this?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in it takes a village. And it's not the chief diversity officer. It is literally all of the leaders. It is literally all your associates. It takes getting everybody involved one way or another. And so the we was everybody. I'd never talked, I think for the first year, I don't think one time I took the main stage and talked. It was always about the leaders talking and leading from the front, and then driving that down through the organization.
Great. And I'm sure when you first took this role, people had all sorts of advice for you. So what type of advice was helpful? What type of advice wasn't so helpful?
Yeah, oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah, all kinds of people had advice, especially for a white guy. And especially for a white guy. And they don't really know my background. They didn't know what kind of made me different. But I think the best piece of advice I got up front was from a woman named Pat Harris, who used to be the chief diversity officer at McDonald's. McDonald's was the best. They always have been the best in my mind. And Pat and I are really good friends. And Pat's the one who said right from the get-go, just put it in business terms, because if you talk about it in terms of kumbaya, let's all hold hands, let's all get along, it won't have traction. It might all be right, but it won't have traction in a business. And so Pat made it really clear. And that was the biggest piece of advice, and that's the one that made the most sense. And so the first time I had a conversation with the leaders, I went in and my opening line, swear to God, was, let me show you how we're going to make money. And they looked at me like, what? And I said, let's talk about how we're going to make money. And here's a tidbit, a fact. Coke, in the 10 years that followed that first conversation, made over $1 billion incremental dollars in the United States, just the United States alone, because of how we drove diversity into every aspect of our business, every single business plan, every single brand plan, et cetera, and how we help people accountable. So Pat was and still is the best and is my friend because of that.
Great. It's good advice.
Yeah.
And I bet you're glad you listened to it.
Yeah, I just, she's a smart person and it made sense, right?
It takes a village, right? So
Yeah.
might as well learn from those who've gone before you as well.
Every day.
Well, and I appreciate that you're such a learner. I mean, what's fun about taking on new roles is there's always surprises. So what was one of the best discoveries you had while you were doing this work?
Yeah, so people typically want to put it in terms of, let's take diversity as an example. People want to put it in terms of representation. And here's the other thing, so it's tied to that. So people are nervous about this topic, a lot of people, especially guys who look like me in leadership roles. So that whether you're talking about diversity, inclusion, equality, equity, affirmative action, whatever terminology you want to use, a lot of people that they're nervous about that, okay? And for some of them, it's like, oh God, that's that legal stuff. And they're scared. They don't know what to do. It's even more so, it's more prevalent today than ever because everything that's going on right all around us in society. And so I had to disarm them. And so I talked to the leaders and I avoided talking about those terms. And I talked about 3 simple words: leverage, collective genius. Okay, leverage, collective genius. I would look at the leaders and say, think about this entire workforce that we have. Think about all the knowledge, skills, and experience every single person in our organization brings to this game. Wouldn't it be cool if we could leverage every bit of them instead of just saying, well, we love that Christy's got this background and she's going to do great things for us here. And yet we really haven't leveraged everything that Christy's about. I said, so wouldn't it be cool if we could leverage collective genius? What leader is going to look at you and say, no, that's not cool? That didn't make any sense. Stupid idea, Steve. It disarms the conversation. It takes the conversation to a different place. It also takes the conversation away from, I need 2 Hispanic males here. Oh, I'd love to have an African-American female here, which is what people do. So this was just, let's leverage collective genius. Because the golden rule, never, ever, ever, ever to be violated, is best person gets a job every single time. Okay? Just the way it's supposed to work, right? And so leveraging the collective genius of your organization. Now, you do other things to make sure the playing field's level, okay? You got to do a lot of other things, and we did a lot of very specific things to level the playing field, but leverage collective genius is the advice I'd give you all to, because that was my big discovery, that disarmed people.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, I'm smiling because I was at McKinsey for a while, and I wasn't ever super excited when I get like the bonus computer with extra RAM so I could crunch numbers, but I loved finding the collective genius within the organization. And that there's always these nuggets that are hiding within the company, and often the leaders don't know.
That's
so the fact
exactly
that you were activating that, and it seemed to disarm people as well.
Yeah, and I mean, it drives innovation in the organization, drives innovative thinking, et cetera, et cetera. You can just go all day on this and really disarm leaders.
Okay, so let's talk about the fact that you're a white male and that you're leading the efforts.
Yeah.
What responsibilities do you think white men have in advancing the conversation?
White males have to lead, okay? Like it or not, white males are still running most of the world, okay? And if you don't engage white males, it has no staying power, has no sustainability. I mean, 2007, we launched a Global Women's Initiative. So here, I'll use that as the example. In all 207 countries in which we operate simultaneously. And it started off by me being in with the CEO and the COO, who look like me, Muta being Turkish, but still 2 white males, and me. And we were talking about the business case. And finally they said, what's the answer? I said, it's not 3 white guys talking about it. That's not going to do it. So how do we, again, leverage the collective genius of the team? And we went out and I told them, I said, we need a women's leadership council. Let's find 16 brilliant, passionate women who can, from all over the globe, who can make a difference for us, and can talk to the white male leaders and have the white male leaders who are in place understand this from a woman's point of view, from a business point of view, from a workplace point of view, from a community point of view, have the women educate the white males, which is what they did. And guess what? The white males started to lead, and not everybody leads. Some of them got it right off the bat, Some of them were reluctant. Some of them were bystanders. But eventually, everybody caught on, if for no other reason than the business demanded it, and all. So white males have to lead, have to champion, have to be aggressive and actionable. They can't just talk the game. They got to be demonstrably active in leading.
Well, and I love that you brought the Women's Council as well, because if I'm remembering correctly, you launched programs in like 200 countries in a very short period of time.
Simultaneously.
Simultaneously. Okay. So how did you pull that off?
Because it takes a village. The Women's Council, so we got the 16 right women, brilliant women, the 16 women and me, working through strategy, figuring out what we needed to do, and meeting the world where the world was. So it was different in Saudi than it was in Indonesia, than it was in Brazil, than it was in the United States. So you had to remember that. You might have a global strategy of what you're trying to do, but you got to meet the world where it is. And so we did that. So we came up with, here's the strategies, here's the initiatives, here's the accountability, here's the metrics. This is what we're going to do globally, but then how are you going to implement it locally? And so we leveraged Collective Genius. We got everybody engaged in it. If you were a business unit president at Coca-Cola, you had to lead this, and Muhtar held you accountable for it. And it was in your performance appraisal and your bonus, et cetera, et cetera. You had to lead. So we just engaged people all over the globe. And whatever strategy we put in place, so when we did accelerated leadership development program for women, we launched a global program, and then we launched local programs, because we realized we wanted to look after high potential women from around the globe, but we also needed to do a deeper dive and accelerate leadership development for women early in the pipeline. And then we had the local folks do that. So it takes a village.
And you followed up shortly thereafter with your multicultural initiatives, right?
Yeah, same thing. Multicultural, which was a US-based initiative, exact same thing in the United States for people of color. Again, you're going to have people who will say to you, you can't have special programs. You can't have a women's only program around accelerated leadership development. You can't have a multicultural initiative. People don't like that, especially white guys. And my answer was really simple. It was, yeah, of course we're going to do that. Real simple. Because if you do the same, it's the definition of insanity, do the same old things, expect different results. No, we're going to be aggressive. We were going to accelerate leadership development for people whose leadership had not been developed to the extent that people who look like me had been. We're going to take aggressive, positive, affirmative steps to develop people and get them ready for the positions. Then, best person still gets the job. But guess what? The pool looked different. Such a concept.
Well, and then, I mean, coming from the private sector,
yeah,
and thinking about being a leader in a community, where do you think the private sector could take more of that leadership role?
Yeah, I think a lot of times organizations, and it could be private sector, but it also could be academic institutions or nonprofits, they're waiting for somebody else to lead. They're waiting for somebody to show them the way. And my counsel has always been, go do it. Start, and then see who follows. You know, and then if you can do it in community. So let's take Seattle. What can Seattle do as a community? Okay, what can the band of employers and organizations here do collectively? So when we have an external program.
Yes, tell them about the external program.
Should
It's
I tell
amazing. Yeah,
okay,
tell a little bit.
Sorry, 5 by 20. So the Clinton Global Initiative in 2010, Muhtar took the stage. Muhtar Kent, who was the COO, then the CEO, and now he's just chairman of the board. And Muhtar took the stage and said, we're going to commit to creating 5 million entrepreneurial jobs for women across the globe by 2020. So hence 5 by 20. And if you know anything about Clinton Global Initiative, when you go there, that's serious business, because obviously it's a big stage. Plus you have to come back every year and report out on your progress. So you're not messing around. You can't just talk and then disappear kind of thing. And we said we're going to create 5 million entrepreneurial jobs, and we're going to do it across our value chain, everything from farm to distributors, to people who were selling our products, to recyclers, to artisans who took the recycled Coke cans and turned it into art and things like that. And we said we're going to launch this around the globe. And in doing that, we said we can't do it alone. Okay, we can't do that by ourselves. We've got a great idea. We can't do it by ourselves. So we found some partners. We found people who would help from microfinancing all over the world. Microsoft helped us because Microsoft helped provide women the technology and those kinds of things. So, we stepped back and said, we got a really good idea. We're going to lead from the front, but we need some people to help us make it work. Figure it out who, and then use them.
And you pulled in that village and really focused on the results and had to report on them every year.
Had to report on them every year, and I will tell you this: when you've traveled all over the world like I have, and in the poorest places in the world, and you've talked to the women one-on-one, and you see the difference it makes, I couldn't swallow talking to the women because they would talk about the trajectory of their lives and the lives of everybody around them changing forever. Boy, that's a powerful drug.
Yeah.
So I would probably some of the coolest moments of my entire life talking to women in the poorest places in the world and seeing the difference it made.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I know we're getting close on time, but with that, often people will have these big ideas and then it can be a little bit too overwhelming to think how to operationalize them. So the 5x20, for example, how did you take that idea and then translate into action and those results?
So this is a piece of advice I've given out to everybody when I can. The pie of opportunity, whether it's around a specific thing like 5x20 or all of our work, pie of opportunity is this big. It's huge, okay? And if you try to do too much too fast, you're going to choke yourself and you're going to choke the organization. The organization has very little capacity to take on things, right? Because everybody's trying to do what their job is. They got tunnel vision, And so it's about sequencing. You have to say, okay, what's the big pie look like? And how do I sequence this in the right way? What's the right first step to take? Do it really well. Learn from it. Then take the second step. By the way, the second step might be different than when you first conjured this whole thing up. Okay, things might have changed because of the first step. The point is, sequence it in. Eventually you get the whole pie. You don't choke the organization, you don't choke yourself.
Very good advice. We don't want anybody choking on this particular pie.
Yeah.
We're almost there on time, but I think one thing that's really interesting about Coca-Cola is a lot of companies are not willing to share what it is that they've done, but they generously said that you can talk about whatever you want and specific programs and specific results and challenges and how you overcame those. So there will be a breakout session later on this afternoon where Steve will be there, and it'll be just like this, except you can ask the questions next time.
There's no agenda, there's no presentation, there's nothing. If you come into the room, we're just going to talk about whatever it is you want to talk about, whatever question you have, whatever challenge you have. I have sat in too many rooms to know that I wanted my questions and thoughts answered and didn't always necessarily hear those. So we're just, anybody who comes in the room, whatever's on your mind, and I'll tell you straight out what I know, and based on my experience. Doesn't mean it's right. I'll just tell you what I know, and I'll give you learnings, good, bad, and ugly. So that's our commercial. But yeah, so I'm happy to share. When you've gone through what Coke went through, and you started from where Coke started, you learn that it's important to pay it forward, and you learn that it's important to lead and accomplish, and then you pay it forward.
And no matter how big you are, it's not too late.
You just got to start. I don't care if you're a small, medium, or large organization. Just got to start, and you got to just keep moving forward, because it's kind of like how you got here today. You knew where you had to get to, whether you run into traffic, a bump in the road, construction. You still got to get there. You just got to figure out the way.
So with that, we are 5 seconds over, but
It's not bad.
It's not bad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
It's great.